Alright, we'll start with the confession. I have titled this video to target the people who lived through and still live for the console wars, which have kind of disappeared in the last few years. But for those of you who don't know me, I'm the guy with no gamertag. I am a lifelong Sony Pony. I started my gaming journey at the age of about 4 years old with a PlayStation 2, and have since then played the PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3, the PlayStation 4 and 5. But in the last year, I have switched over to PC for most of my games. It's made it a lot easier for recording and gaming with my friends, actually being able to play the same games, especially because as much as I love a lot of Sony first-party games, they do have a knack of screwing things up. Like they tried to with Helldivers. Thank goodness they allowed Xbox players to play the greatness of that game, but Jesus Christ, it took so long that me and Fred both built PCs before they could release that game for Xbox. But anyway, one of the best things that it's allowed me to do is now start to try out games that were on Xbox, which I've never really had the chance to play. And this has meant that I can finally dip my feet into the world of Halo, which was the baptism of fire that brought Fred and Kyle into multiplayer gaming, and is something I can finally experience for myself. Now, I was going back to this expecting an old game. As I said, I played a PlayStation 2. At that time it was mostly racing games, but I am well aware of the limitations of those systems. So I wasn't going into this expecting a battle pass or it's your persistent online servers. I knew that was never going to exist for this game. But I must say, I was blown away at what this game achieved, considering the original came out in 2001. Now, the veterans among you will know that I'm playing with the anniversary graphics, so this is a major visual update given in this version of the game. Mostly because I couldn't actually find out how to change the graphics settings to the original graphics. I still don't, and I will have to rely on Fred and Kyle to teach me how to do that. But overall, the mechanics of this game were really impressive for when it came out. And this was mostly notable when you've got the Warthog missions, and the Warthog is one of the best fucking vehicles in any game I've ever played. It's so chaotic and slidey, and you can just spin it on a fucking coin. It's so silly, and I love this vehicle to death. I spent far too long in the island mission trying to take the Warthog everywhere. I spent probably about half an hour trying to get it through a tree, which I spent ramming another Warthog into it to try and just squeeze it through a gap that it was not designed to go through. And then the big chunguses at the top had to ruin my fun.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
But anyway, one of the things that it showed me was that the enemies all try to dive out of the way of the vehicle, and it's a very smooth animation. It's very well done, and that was just so impressive to me, because a lot of shooters and other action games didn't have these sorts of mechanics for a number of years. Like, I don't think I see anything like this in Uncharted or the old Call of Duties. Like, you just didn't see this, which to me, as someone who has programming understanding but not game development understanding, that is very impressive for that time, especially with just the memory limitations of games at that time. It's really stuck out to me. And also just the imagination behind the game, all the skyscapes and the locations and the premise of the game was cool. Like, the concept of the Halo ring and how big that structure must be, it's just cool sci-fi. I absolutely love the premise of it. But one of the best bits about the game overall is arguably that it doesn't get you doing too many different things on each mission, which sounds bizarre, but there's a very good reason as to why it's very enjoyable. For the most part, you are shooting anything that is in front of you, pressing a few panels, and driving a vehicle every now and then. That is pretty much every mission in this game. But the thing that makes all of these missions stand out is the way they make the player feel and the context behind doing all of those actions. If you're driving the Warthog around the island, it's very different to then driving the tank through the snowy caverns. It's a very different dynamic. And then a lot of the missions, yes, you're running through just shooting as many Covenant as you can, but sometimes you're in very crowded and cramped spaces when you've got to fight two of the big chunky Covenants who I keep forgetting what they're called. And that was really difficult. And even on the normal difficulty, I kept dying in this game. And there's some checkpoints, like in the library, where you have to figure out that fighting is not your best option and you have to hide. And it's just those sort of old school game mechanics and game design philosophies were just so much fun to play through, because it was just requires the player to do a bit of thinking. And it's like you can just imagine the amount of people that they were playing this as a kid, couldn't figure this out, and were probably screaming at their TV because they couldn't work out how to get through this section. And to be honest, I was there just like, what am I supposed to do? They're spawning in so many enemies and I can't get past them. And it was just that challenge made me attach some sort of feeling to each mission. And then when you get introduced to the flood later, they were so creepy, especially the little ones. They just make this little wet pitter-patter noise, and it was just so disconcerting and creepy. And so whilst, yes, every single mission has you doing very similar things, each one felt unique, and it's made Combat Evolved feel very memorable to play through. Although that being said, you will notice as you play through the game there is a lot of repeated geometry in the game. There's one section of the game where you're going into various different facilities, and you will notice the fighting rooms are identical. It's just some of them have different walls blocked off or different routes to go through them, but the actual geometry of the room is identical. But that being said, having played games of that era, I understand that that's memory limitation. That is just how games had to be built to function at that time. Otherwise it'd have been 10 minutes to beat the game. So I will forgive it that, and it's almost part of its charm. And I kind of feel bad in a way for people that have grown up with recent games, because you've got all of the open world and you've got all of the new possibilities of increased memory and computation that current consoles have, but some of it definitely lacks the charm that these older games have, because they couldn't do everything. They had to do one thing really well to stand out, and I have to say Halo Combat Evolved did that, and I'm so happy that I got the chance to play it. So GG X-Bros, Halo is all that, and I am looking forward to playing the rest of the games, and especially getting to do it co-op once we all get the Master Chief Collection, because I really want to tell my friends how many nice cafes I've been taking their mothers to. But anyway, I do hope you've enjoyed this video. I do hope if you get the chance to give Halo a go, if you've never played it before and you've played plenty of other shooters. It is in a way FPS bedrock, and it's totally worth playing in my opinion. But wait for it to be on a good deal. I mean, I got it for £8, so I will always be happy with it at that price. But anyway, I've been the guy with no gamer tag, and I'll see you on another video.